Okay, so first of all, thank you very much to the technicians. You always save our lives in the presentation. Thank you. Good job. So I have to say, very welcome, everybody. I'm really happy to see so many people here in the audience. Thank you very much for the little introduction. I will give you a few words about me, and then we jump right into the presentation and the work I would like to show you. So, as already mentioned, I'm an artist. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. And in the artwork that I'm doing since many years or decades, I'm very much interested in the impact that the new technologies have on our 21st century. And that as an artist, I try to create visions and utopias which are emerging under the impact of these new technologies. And since about 2011, I'm working on a very complex project and series which I entitled Outer Space. And the series is very much about the cultural impact of human space exploration from that means from an artist's perspective. And I will give you a little overview what I've done over the past years. So the Outer Space series deals with the latest developments in space exploration and the way they will shape our future life on Earth, in Earth near orbit, on other moons, and on other planets. It's very important for me that the artwork aims to elucidate the cultural dimension implicit in such technological developments and transpose it into a process of artistic transformation. So the entire body of work includes today more than 50 artworks, and these 50 artworks are divided in 5 thematic groups, and I will show you some works which are related to these different topics. Number 1 is the human body in space. Then number 2 are launch vehicles, spaceships, and satellites. Number 3 is sustainable energy from space. Number 4, astronomy and big data coming from the universe. And number 5 is the idea of terraforming and creating and finding new worlds. So how do you get started as an artist with a new body of work? First of all, when I started the series in 2011, I had the feeling that something is happening in the space industry. Something is changing. It was the end of the space shuttle program. So that was the very last launch of an American space shuttle, the Atlantis. And I said, well, I have to go to see a rocket launch and see what it means to go to space. And then I traveled to Cape Canaveral and I saw and photographed the very last launch of Atlantis. So that was a mind-blowing experience to me. It was really an incredible and unforgettable experience. And that became the very first artwork that I have created within this series. It's entitled Final Mission. And it's based on 3 images that I shot after 10 seconds, after 30 seconds, and after 1 minute after the launch. And these 3 images are composed together to give an idea how much energy, how much trust is needed to overcome Earth gravity and to bring and transport such a little shuttle into orbit. So when I saw this launch, I was so impressed, and usually as an artist, I have a very hands-on approach. That means the performative aspect is very important for me. I need to be involved in things to understand how they work, how they function, to get an idea what I'm talking about and how I can create artistic work based on this experience. And then I said, if I work on the topic of space exploration, it's a very how do you say, it's for most of the people, it's a very abstract topic because everybody is fascinated about space. Nobody has been there, almost nobody. And so I said to myself, I need to go to space myself as an artist and become the first artist in space to have this experience and to work on this experience. So I discovered the project or the development of Virgin Galactic and their Spaceship Two. So I approached them and got in touch with them, and I decided to come to become one of their pioneer astronauts and fly into space and do a suborbital space ride with their Spaceship Two. So I met Richard Branson a long time ago. That was in 2012 when I signed up with Virgin Galactic, and they explained me all these the project, the technologies, what they want to do, their visions, and I was absolutely intrigued. And I said, "That's I go along with this, and I really want to do this." And as you maybe know, last December, Virgin Galactic, after many setbacks and many delays, finally they reached the border of space. And so that at least they proved that they can do it with their spaceship after the crash in 2014, which was a huge setback. So it's coming closer now. We're getting closer to that this becomes reality. But as an artist, I wanted to go a step further and asking how do professional astronauts train and prepare for space travel before they go to the International Space Station. And I approached the Russians and the training center in Star City and asked them for training with the cosmonauts. They are preparing to International Space Station. As you can imagine, they not really opened immediately the doors to an artist. And so we had a year of discussion and explanation what an artist can do, what they do, and finally they opened me the doors to train there, but also to do it as a performative, as an artistic performance. And they allowed me to take pictures, to take videos, and to use my own body for creating artwork. So I will give you a little impression what I did in Star City to get personal experience what it means to prepare your human body for traveling to space. So there's a little movie which I'm going to show you, and it shows you a little bit what I did. Do we have sound? We don't have sound. Oh, we have sound. Thank you.
Then I can do this.
Yeah, you move two hooks.
Yeah. Нет, ну, мир безопасности.
А скажите ему, чтобы он подмигнул, я крупный план снимаю. Пусть подмигнет.
So this is the spacewalk training you do underwater to simulate and learn how to move in weightlessness when you are in an astronaut suit.
It was too short. I would like to continue.
Let's do some interviews. Just brief your comments.
So next step was experience heavy gravitational forces. So I did a MiG-29 ride into the stratosphere.
Now don't operate.
Yeah.
Don't touch this button. Oxygen. Middle button.
I have to say that was the entire introduction into that. So it took about 30 seconds preparations and then we left. So So there were several cameras installed in the cockpit to create and shoot all the footage that I needed later for artistic video creation. That was the hardest thing in my life, I have to say.
The loops were really hard when it went up.
So that went up to 7 Gs. Then I went to this is in the DLR, the German Space Center. There I did several trainings in the centrifuge to test their new machines and to experience what it means also to suffer gravitational forces in short arm centrifuges.
Fühlst du dich, Michael?
Alles klar. Reden etwas schwierig.
Komm zurück.
I was shocked. I was 15 minutes in there. Thank you.
It tries to inflate like a balloon. If somebody gets underneath you.
So then in the United States, I did a so-called halo jump. This is a parachute jump out of 10,000 meters altitude.
And then you're tangled together. This is rather dangerous.
Rather. So what is a better way to feel Earth gravity than falling down for a long time and feel that on your own body?
I tell you that ain't ever gonna happen, but I can figure that out.
We had 3 cameramen in the air. I had 7 cameras on my own body. And that was 2 minutes of free fall with 300 kilometers per hour towards the surface. You can imagine it was a really hard job also for the cameraman to shoot this. We had a very precise choreography, what they had to do during these 2 minutes. What you can see here.
Yeah, there you go.
Woo! Holy shit.
So what I learned from all these trainings, there were 3 personal conclusions. Number 1, the human body is not made for space. Number 2, you always need very complex technological shells to protect your body in this surrounding. And number 3, gravity rules everything. So I wanted to show you this little documentary also to give you an idea what artists do before they create artwork. Because many people think that we are sitting all day long in our studios until a spark comes and gives us brilliant ideas to create artworks. That's not the case. So, well, at least not for me. I have to do a lot of personal experience. I have to learn a lot about certain topics. I read a lot to get an understanding of what I'm talking about. And based on all this experience, I start to create artwork. So let's start with the topic of human body in space. This is an artwork which then is based on the underwater shooting we did in Star City in the huge Hydro Lab. So it's called Liquid Gravity. It shows myself in the astronaut suit, and it gives also, or it transports the idea of how many technological shells are needed when you talk about space exploration. If you look at the Earth, the planet has a shell that is the atmosphere. Then between these atmosphere, then comes space, and then you have this porthole which leads you into a new architectural space, which is obviously a hydro lab, and from there you have the suit, the astronaut suit, which is another technical shell surrounding the human body. So it's the onion principle. You go from one shell to the next, and inside is a fragile human body trying to survive in an extreme environment. And when you look to the Earth and you look to the rest of the picture, you also understand that this is a simulation of reality. And that's what I'm always interested as an artist. I never want to show reality. I'm very much interested on the thin line oscillating between reality and simulation. So with the artwork that I'm doing, I'm also always want to question what is real, what is simulation. And as you all know, especially here, simulation is a key part in space exploration. So this artwork entitled Kinetic Drift refers to my experience during the zero-G training, and the idea that you totally lose your sense of orientation. So you really don't know where is up, where is down, where is left, where is right. That's a selfie at 20,000 meters altitude and almost twice the speed of sound. So that's a self-portrait that I took during the MiG flight. And it's created in a way that you see only a very little part of human skin. You can see part of my cheek, and all the rest is really covered by a technological shell which helps to survive these extreme conditions. The same here, Orbital Outpost is a recomposition of several images shot from outboard cameras on the International Space Station during a spacewalk, but it also includes the history of the vision of space stations. It shows the very first drawings from 1913 of how a space station could look. I go over there and show that here. So this is a drawing from Hans Werner Obert from 1913. And then you have Werner von Braun's idea of a wheeled shaped space station producing artificial gravity. Then you have the mother of all space stations on the top, that's Stanley Kubrick's space station. And then on the bottom right, in the middle, you see the Skylab, which then was the first real station, manned station in space. On the right side, you see the Mir, the Russian space station. And then here on the left side is Tiangong 5. So that's the future space station of the Chinese. And again, it's all about a protective technical shell which is surrounding the human body. So this is a portrait from a crew in Baikonur right at the moment before they're entering their Soyuz spaceship. And it's the moment when they get asked, are you ready to leave Earth? And they have to confirm that they're ready. And I think you can see in their faces what it means to them to leave the planet and to go on these incredible adventure. So humans in space means also human robotic in space. And this is one of the most advanced intelligent and human robots built by NASA and tested now in Scotland, in Edinburgh, at the Robotic Research Center. And these robots one day should be sent to Mars and prepare the arrival of humans and build habitats on Mars. So I portrayed this in the laboratory. So you have seen some images which I created, and I give you an idea now what we do as artists, how we bring these things into physical objects and how we bring them to the public. So this is a little movie of an exhibition that I did 2 or 3 years ago, and yeah, it gives a good sense what we do as artists to prepare exhibitions. That was in Germany in 2015.
Also ihr seid's, ja.
As you can see, I do very large-scale artworks.
That's my little boy. He's also very space addicted in the meanwhile.
Such an exhibition takes about a year of preparation, logistics, until the day of the opening. And usually I'm doing around 10 exhibitions per year. So you can imagine that it's always a lot of logistics, preparations, organizations, besides the artistic creation. So let's go to test facilities, launch vehicles, spaceships, and satellites. So this is an artwork that I created last year based on the very first CubeSat, which left Earth and was on the way to Mars. And as you all know, CubeSats are the future of satellite business, because they're becoming smaller and smaller and stronger and stronger in their possibilities. And what I was so much interested is that these CubeSats that left Earth and went to Mars, you can go back about 100 years in history to the Russian constructivism, and these guys around Elizitsky and Malevich, they came up with the idea of suprematist satellites. So that means 100 years ago, they came up, they did drawings and paintings where they were showing objects which could one day fly around an orbit, in an orbit around the planet. So they envisioned all these things that we today are creating and even sending to Mars. And if you look on the upper part of the image in this, I'll show it here. Up there, this little object is a drawing from 1913, and it shows a suprematist satellite. And that was my inspiration to create the entire composition of this CubeSat. Here, it's not a photograph. This is entirely 3D and CGI rendered based on hundreds of drawings and technical sketches that I got from NASA and from JPL. So we reconstructed them, the CubeSat, by CGI rendering. This might be familiar. So that's your large space simulator, which I photographed in summer last year. And that was a very inspiring location to me. It's really incredible, and it's so unreal. You know, here there is no digital transformation because it looks like a simulation. The architectural space here is so unreal. The way we illuminated it and the way how I photographed it makes it very complex and difficult to understand what kind of space are we really looking here. And that what fascinates a lot of people when they see these images for the first time. So this is how it looks installed on the wall. This is another artwork entitled Gravitational Rotator, and it's also a centrifuge in Russia, in Star City. And that's where they put the astronauts or the cosmonauts in and then spin you around. And I can tell you it's really a hard job and a very extreme experience. So this one is more abstract. It's also based on the experience of rotating and the experience of this acceleration when the human body is inside the centrifuge. And what happens is that really everything goes like stretched into the extremes, but on the same time you're very much focused on one certain point, like you're going into a tunnel, and then you lose your color vision, so it makes click, and then you only see black and white. That's due to the gravitational forces and the loss of blood in your brain. You lose your color vision. That's very frightening when you experience that at the first time. And then it really absorbs you into a tunnel, and you are running the risk to lose your consciousness. And all these extreme experiences, what happens with my perception, you can see here in this artwork. It's combined with technical data, so measurements of my heartbeat, and my cardio data and everything is included, because it's of course all the time monitored by medicines, And so all the data they recorded from my body and my brain are here also included in the artwork. So let's go to French Guiana. This is the assembly building in French Guiana where they put together the Ariane rockets. And I was very much intrigued by this architectural construction. And I asked for portraying the building without the launcher, because everybody is so fascinated when the launcher is in. But I was very much intrigued, how does it look when the launcher is out? Because there you see the complexity of these architectural structure, that you have to move in every direction, up, down, left, right. You have to work on every level on the launcher. And I think this gives you a fantastic idea of how complex this building is. Of course, you never could see it with the naked eye like this, because many things would be hidden in the shadow. So these are 10 or 12 different exposures, and all these exposures then are merged together on the computer to really bring every little detail into visibility that is existing in this assembly hall. This is the other integration building, and this is how it looks like when the launcher is in. Again, I was very much fascinated by the technical complexity of the architectural structure. And this is one of my favorites, which I always was very keen on realizing this picture, because I think French Guiana, Kourou, it's such an exceptional place on this planet, because you have pure forest, you have the jungle, you have the nature, and once a month a rocket is launching out of the forest. So it's a very surreal and unreal place when you see that. And I was very much interested in the composition of this artwork to show the idea that we are leaving the planet, we are going from our natural habitat into an artificial habitat, we are flying into space, but there's also a connection between what we are doing up in space, because we are looking down a lot from space towards the planet. Satellite technologies are helping us to understand better the system of our planet, the way how we destroy our planet, how we transform it, transform the planet. So this is all seen and calculated from our observation and measurements in space today. So for me, it's very important that people understand that if we talk about space and space exploration, we're not only looking up into space and talking about the moon and other planets, we're talking a lot about our own planet, and that's very important. So future space exploration and space technologies will help us to get a better understanding of what's going on our own planet, and I think that's very important for people to understand. This is an exhibition that is currently installed in Seoul, in Korea, and the exhibition is entitled Civilization, and these are more than 300 artworks in the exhibition, and it's all about the human civilization. So what have we done after a century of industrialization, 2 world wars, the atomic bomb, the huge acceleration in the last decades, the digitalization of our society, to which point have we come as a human species, and what have we done with our planet? And one key artwork of this exhibition is the artwork that I have created in French Guiana, which is called Orbital Ascent. This artwork is entitled Gravity Turn, also shot during a launch of an Ariane 5. So this painting might be familiar to some of you. It's a very, very important painting in art history, especially in German art history. It's the Sea of Ice, the Wreck of Hope, from Caspar David Friedrich. It's a very, very famous painting about the idea of failure, of destroyed hope, of destroyed dreams. What you can see here are all these ice shards, and on the right side there is a ship. And this ship was a trading ship at the time, supposed to discover new trading routes. And as you can see, the ship is not really going on its way. It's stuck in the ice shards, it's smashed, it's crashed, and it's destroyed. And it's also about the idea of the relationship between nature, human technology, going beyond boundaries, going beyond the limits, going for new adventures and new things. And sometimes we fail. Sometimes things do not work out the way we thought they would. But the question is, what do we do when we are facing failures? And one very important milestone and failure for me and also for, I think, for the upcoming private space industry was the crash and the fatal accident of Spaceship Two in 2014. So when the spaceship exploded during a test flight and crashed down to the surface, and there were two people in the spaceship, two pilots, two test pilots, and one was killed, and the other one survived the accident, what was a miracle. And that brought the whole thing to a point where everybody had to think about, what are we doing? Does it really make sense to bring civilians to space? Can we do that? Should we do that? What limits are we facing? How do we move forwards? Why are we doing it? So Virgin Galactic started really to question all these things and to see how they can move forward. And also for us, like pioneer astronauts, it was a decisive moment, because we thought, what are we going to do? Are we pulling out of the program? Are we supporting Branson? Do we continue? What happens if one day we are inside the spaceship and it crashes? So a lot of questions came up when this accident happened. And as an artist, of course, I had to do a statement, an artistic work based on this accident. So I came up with the idea of doing a reinterpretation of Caspar David Friedrich's painting, The Sea of Ice. And what I did is this. So the work is entitled Serious Anomaly. What I did is I collected the footage of the 4 or 5 press photographers which were on site during the test flight. So I was not there, and there was no way for me to go there to photograph the wreckage. So I collected all the material from these photographers on site. So I got hundreds of different images, and then I did a recomposition with all these pictures, a recomposition of Friedrich's painting. So as you can see, it's an exact and precise reinterpretation of Friedrich's painting, but instead of ice blocks and ice shards, these are all real parts of an exploded spaceship. And on the very right side, I will go over there. On the very right side, where in Friedrich's painting, the ship is smashed and crashed between the ice shards, you see here the seat, the pilot seat of the pilot who survived the crash. So he was able, when he was falling down, he was able to open his safety belt, and then he released the seat, and he was falling down to the surface. And later, the authorities, they found the pilot seat, and there was a picture also from this seat, and so I integrated the seat in this entire composition. And this is how it looks like installed in an exhibition room, or an exhibition space. So let's go to astronomy. Let's see what the time says. We have 15 minutes. Okay, astronomy, very important topic also, of course, in the field of space explorations. As you all might know, there are huge leaps in astronomy, new telescopes, new technologies. We're looking deeper and deeper in not only into space, but only deeper into history. Because whenever we look into the universe, we look into the past. And that means we learn a lot about the past and the way how the universe was built and developed. And when we do that, we learn a lot about ourselves and our own human existence. So I traveled a lot to Chile at the Atacama Desert because there are a lot of incredible new telescopes. And a couple of artworks have been created there based on pictures that I took there in the Atacama Desert. This one here, called Gravitation Entanglement, shows a very futuristic, or a date very much in the future. In about 4 to 5 billion years, our galaxy will crash and collide with our neighborhood galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy. And we know that today because we can calculate it. And what is so interesting is that usually these two galaxies, they would not crash. They would drive apart. But due to their gravitational forces, there is a gravitational entanglement. So that means they attract each other. And then they collide and they will destroy each other. And not only galaxies, but every single object, every human being has a gravitational field attracting others, and sometimes things collide, and the result is destruction. But from the destruction, new things can be born. New things can raise up. And the same from the collision of two galaxies, new galaxy will be built. So this is ALMA, the largest telescope array on the planet, formed of 66 remote-controlled antennas. This is shot on the top of a mountain in an altitude of 5,000 meters. So these were really hard conditions to work there. That's how they looked installed in an exhibition space. This one might be also familiar. It's one of the mirrors of the James Webb Space Telescope, which I photographed many years ago at the Balla Aerospace in the clean room. This is MUSE. It's a 3D field spectrograph, also photographed in Chile in a clean room before this machine was inserted into a telescope. This is a museum show we did a couple of years ago in Germany, where these two artworks have been presented. Then that's one of my current favorites. It's the FAST. It's the largest radio telescope on the planet in China. And it has 500 meters of diameter. So it's so huge. It's unbelievable. And it was opened last year. And it's hidden completely in the middle of China in the mountains. So it's very hard to access. And it's very difficult to get access. And it's a long story how I made it finally to the top of a mountain to photograph this. Officially, it's not accessible. So I had a lot of luck that at the end of the day, I could go in and photograph this. And when you then are on the top of the mountain and you're looking at this machine, it's just sublime. It's so big. And there's only nature and mountains and valleys around. And then you have this instrument built by humans. And what I was very much intrigued is the story behind, because the Chinese built this incredible instrument with the main purpose of discovering extraterrestrial communication. So they said, if there's something out there, they please should talk first to us before they talk to others. So that's the main purpose of this instrument. Of course, a lot of astronomers are using it today for doing other research, but that's why they build it. They want to find extraterrestrial signals. And that's the way how the artwork is composed. You see the large sphere, which is embedded in the forests, and you go up to the top of the image where you see a dark sky and you see the stars, and then that gives you the enormous distance where these signals come from or go to. So it's all about our relation between Earth, the surface, and the universe. That's also currently in the Civilization exhibition in Seoul, which will move now to Beijing. That might be familiar also. That's a visualization of space debris, which I created, I think, in 2012, many years ago. And that was a collaboration also with a German space agency. And they provided me a lot of data that is related to all the artificial objects that we have around in space. So as you may know, there are about 600,000 objects circulating around our heads in space. And most of people do not know that. And in fact, it's an environmental pollution. So it's a big problem that we have up there. And the space debris might increase due to collisions and explosions. So we have to find something to clean up that mess up there. And there's also a video work which I created, and shows the development of space debris from 1957 with Sputnik, the first artificial object we put in space, and goes up to 2046. And then it's a calculation what might happen with the space debris if there are only 2 accidents that are a possible event. And then we might go to this cascade effect, that we are exponentially increasing the space debris, and then it gets a real threat to our satellite infrastructure that we have in space. And this is an installation of the video work in your museum, and it's with 10 projectors, so it's a 360-degree projection. And then when visitors come and people are standing in the exhibition space, they're just surrounded by space debris. All the particles are flying around them, and then I get an idea how many of them are really up there in space. So last topic, we go to sustainable energy in space. I do this a little bit shorter. I photographed a very interesting instrument at the DLR in Cologne last year. It's Synlight. It's the largest artificial sun on the world, and it's composed of hundreds of high potential lights, lamps, and these are able to produce an enormous heat and focus the heat and light beam to one point, and it gets, on the other side, it gets so hot that this light beam is able to divide water into hydrogen and oxygen. And as you all know, hydrogen is a potential fuel for satellites and spaceships. So this is a way how we could in the future produce fuels just based on water. And water is abundant in the universe and in our solar system. So we could use this element to propel our satellites and spaceships. And this artwork also refers to the idea of asteroid mining. That means finding and extracting water resources on asteroids and use this to produce fuel. As you all know, the moon comes more and more into focus now. Everybody wants to get back to the moon for several reasons. One interesting reason I found is the idea of extracting helium-3 on the moon. So helium-3, as you might know, is an isotope of helium, and via nuclear fusion, helium-3 could produce enormous amounts of clean energy. So we still have to work on this technology of nuclear fusion, of course, but one day I think we will be able to do that, and helium-3 is abundant on the moon's surface. And especially the Chinese are very keen on going back to the moon to extract helium-3, bring it back to Earth, and use it as an energy resource. So what I did here is I photographed the Moon Valley in the Moon Valley in Chile, and it's combined with historical images shot from the Apollo missions. So it's the real moon, and it's the Moon Valley in Chile, and these are intermingled and fused. And then, as you see, 1/3 of the image is composed just gray, and that means that's sand. That's the regolith. That's where all the resources are hidden. But you also can use, as you know, the regolith for 3D building of habitats. And I think you have this image from Foster, Norman Foster, also here at ESTEC. Is this one here? There's a little part of this concept of building habitats based on 3D printing using moon regolith. So let's go to the idea of terraforming and new worlds. Do I have 5 more minutes? Is that okay? Yeah? Good. An eternity, I know, not that long, but okay. So terraforming is a topic that we discuss a lot now, terraforming Mars, transforming a planet which has hostile and not habitable environment into something that can be inhabited by humans. And what do we have to do to terraform Mars? We have to release greenhouse gases. We have to create liquid water. We have to augment the temperature surface level with the thicken the atmosphere and increase the level of water on the planet. So all these techniques might sound familiar because we are doing that on Earth currently. And I think it's a very strange discussion to say, on one hand, what can we do with Mars to inhabit this planet one day and to transform it? And at the same time, we are applying exactly these techniques to our own planet and destroying our own planet. So here, this artwork is entitled Interplanetary Landscape, and it's fusion between images shot from Curiosity on Mars surface and the Mars Valley in Chile, where the rover has been tested before. So NASA tested rovers exactly there in these landscapes because it's so similar to Mars, and then they send it up to the Mars surface. So a lot of these parts of this image are shot on Mars. To give you an idea, like this entire part here is Mars surface. Here are parts of Mars surface. The top is a lot of Mars. So it's very subtle, in a subtle way fused, that you have both planets in one. And as Mars is coming more and more into our focus, and it's more and more important what we do on Mars, what we learn from Mars about Earth, that's the reason why I wanted to create an artwork which brings both planets closer together. This is entitled Sense of Mars, and is about the idea of starting in the next decade with little habitats there, probably inflatable habitats first, based on the Buckminster-Fuller geodetic cupola concept, and start then from there to build step by step habitats and maybe a Mars civilization. And it's precisely the landscape in Chile where NASA tests all their rovers before they're sent up to Mars. This artwork is entitled Europa, and it's a fusion between images taken by a satellite from a flyby over Europa, Jupiter's moon, and pictures that I took in Iceland on a glacier. And as you might know, that NASA discovered there's a huge ocean on Europa. It's about 20 kilometers deep, and it's the most likely place in the universe, as we know so far, where other life forms might exist. And the little figure there is a metaphor for our innate sense of curiosity, of discovery, of finding new worlds, of going into different or new territories to find new places to live and to discover new worlds. This work is about global warming and the loss of glacier ice, which is a very huge problem that we're facing today. And as some people are neglecting this fact, of course, we can measure precisely from space the loss of ice and glacier mass that we have every year. And this artwork is a mix between pictures that I took on the surface of a glacier in Iceland in combination with satellite images that are taken from space exactly from the same glacier. So it's a combination between the meta perspective from space and the macro perspective right on the surface of our planet. This artwork is about the idea how plants can grow in micro and zero gravity, a very important topic also, as we need to build greenhouses on future space stations and also on Moon or Mars bases. It's very important to survive there and to have sustainable habitats. So all the experiments about how plants can grow in micro and zero gravity are very important for our future space explorations and for human presence in space. This was an installation in Moscow 2 years ago at the Biennale there. And I think this is the last one from the photographic artworks. It's entitled Liquid Gravity. And it's also about the idea of terraforming. And this is an ice wall photographed inside an ice cave, inside a melting glacier. So we went with an expedition inside the glacier. The melting glacier is producing holes in the ice. And then we went into one of these holes. And this wall is just in the moment of transition. That means when you're in there, you hear the cracks, you hear the drops falling, and you can feel that this ice wall is dying. And it was traveling over thousands of years on this glacier and transporting elements, materials, history. And now it comes to the point where it starts to melt, to transform from its solid state of ice into its liquid state of water. And the wall will melt down, crack down, and flow into the ocean and increase again the level of our oceans. And that's the moment of transition, of transformation. That's how it looks as a triptych, also installed in the museum in Moscow. And the triptych brings the viewer in a very immersive feeling, so that he really stands inside these huge ice caves and get a feeling of what it means. Because as beautiful as it is on one side, if you know about the idea and the concept, and if you know what you see, at the same time, it starts to get really frightened, and it gives you an emotional impact of what we are doing with our nature or our natural environment. So, last but not least, there is a 3-minute video. It's an artwork entitled Spacewalk, and we shot that during my spacewalk training underwater. And the text that I'm talking in this video is based on writings from Isaac Newton in the 17th century, from a very early writing from Newton before he developed the laws of gravity. And I think all this text you will hear now, in combination with the image you see, should inspire you and probably gives you a lot of idea what space exploration is about and how intense space exploration, how deep space exploration is related to our own human existence.
You are released actually, you are falling down. Okay, we're waiting for the command from you to begin.
Space is immutable eternal continuity, stretching out endlessly in every direction. Nowhere can we imagine a boundary without immediately thinking that yet more space exists on its farther side. To think in terms of boundaries is to restrict reality. There's more reality in this space than another, but this has to do with the body, not the space itself. If we can perhaps conceive that there's nothing in this space except the body, we cannot imagine that the space itself does not exist. In a similar way, we cannot imagine that there is no such thing as time, even though it could well be possible to fabricate both time and space.
Relax and enjoy now.
So thank you very much. For those who are more interested or even more into details, there is a big book out there. It's called Outer Space, and you can get it via Amazon, of course, and there are a lot of more details about all this work that I'm doing. And if you would like to follow on Instagram, this is my Instagram address, or go on my website. So I have to say thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope it was inspiring. Thank you.